Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? What's up, Bramley? Thank you all for tuning in to the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB Network, live in the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Thanks for making us a part of your day, as always. June, what are we, 27th, Skinny? 28th, 27th?
27th, yeah.
27th at the time of this recording. So we're almost to July. Training camp is, I don't even I can say on the horizon yet, but it's in the distant future. It's a dream thought now. It's coming up. We actually will have some actual football to talk about. But until then, still a few weeks of the true NFL offseason, which is always fun and interesting. But I think we got a good show for you today. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. We are going to today's show, and then next week's show we'll do defense. We're going to do offensive positional rankings within the NFL. And we're going to include Sean McVay in that since he's kind of the offensive coach, and we'll include Chris Shula next week when we do defense and see where these groups stack up. So obviously quarterback will be just Matthew Stafford, but everyone else will be the position group. So the receiving core, the running back room, the offensive line, tight end will probably be a little more just Tyler Higbee. But it's kind of a mix of the group, but tight ends, usually it's one player. There's not like teams that have like a 3-headed tight end monster or whatever. So anyway, should be fun. We'll get into it. So, but first and foremost, I've talked long enough. Skinny T, what's up, man? How are you doing? New location, same great look. How are you?
Yeah, new location. I got family in town, so they're occupying the guest room, as it were, which is also the office that I normally record in. But I've always wanted to have books behind me.
Yeah.
So I got a few books back there. So
what's that a map of?
Well, it's a Brooklyn Naval Shipping Yard, or Navy Yard. Yeah, found it in a thrift shop in Pomona, and it was a great price. Couldn't live without it, so snagged that.
Love it. I've been to your house so many times, and I've seen that. I've just never even thought to ask what it was until now, when it's in my view the entire time now.
It has no significance whatsoever. I've been to Brooklyn, but that's about it.
Speaking of Brooklyn, I saw this random video today of this little Italian deli in Brooklyn. And they're making these, I mean, this isn't anything crazy different, but for a meatball sub, they basically had these homemade hoagie rolls, and they would take out the inside. So get all the extra dough in there and then stuff it with the meatballs and cheese. It looked fantastic.
That is my language right there, man. I had to go up to San Francisco for a doctor's appointment, and it was literally, I flew out the same day within a couple hours, but I had a chance to go up to North Beach. If you're ever in San Francisco, Molinari's in North Beach. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Just nothing like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I know there's good Italian food here in LA, but it's one of the few cities that doesn't really have a little Italy per se, right? That I know of. I mean, there's little areas all throughout LA that has more Italian cuisine, I guess. But do you have a go-to spot? Italian food is my love language. I love Italian food. I'm Italian.
I don't have a go-to spot yet. I went to Musso and Frank's. I was down in Hollywood last weekend, and that's an Italian place, more of a steakhouse. But I don't have an Italian joint yet.
Yeah, there's a little.
Actually, no, that's not true. Casabianco in Eagle Rock. That's a great place.
There you go.
I've only been there once, so it's hard to say it's my joint, but really well done.
Eagle Rock,
old school too.
Yeah, Eagle Rock actually has some good Italian spots. Right on Colorado, there's 3, I think, on Colorado Boulevard there. There's one here in Pasadena I like a lot. It's there's a few good Italian spots here in Pasadena, but there's a little tiny hole in the wall called Tardino Bros. It's literally like an alley. It's an alley that has 5 outdoor tables. Inside, I think, has 2 tables, and in the kitchen, it's family owned. The menu's pretty small. Really good though. You can bring your own wine for a corkage fee. Yeah. Little Tardino Bros. So that's really good. And then I've said probably on the show, I worked at a place called Roman Cucina in Orange County for, a lot, all through college. I left for a little bit, then went back. So, they had really good Italian food, and cool. My buddy owns it now. So that's a good Italian. Maybe we didn't do a live show there one time.
I love that.
Yeah. Skinny tea on some hefty, Italian food.
Perfect. Yeah.
So anyway, show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. You can bet on basically baseball, or you got the hot dog eating contest coming up. No Joey Chestnut. So we have a little different betting. It's not, that was just the easy bet to bet on Joey Chestnut always. Now you got to actually maybe do some research. But you can do that all at betonline.ag. Obviously, NFL futures, prop bets, MVP, you just did an article today. Matthew Stafford is the dark horse who we've been saying and you've been saying is our pick anyway to win the MVP this year. Rams Super Bowl odds all can be found at betonline.ag. Tell me, guys, at the Rams, Skinny sent you. Last thing, Skinny, before we jump into this full-on Rams rankings, did you see that? Because, I mean, it's ridiculous anyway that Chestnut got taken out of the contest because he has like a vegan sponsor or something. But did you see the Netflix special of Kobayashi versus Chestnut?
No,
You didn't see this? Oh,
No,
dude, it's going to be incredible. A Netflix event, Kobayashi versus Chestnut. They haven't like gone head to head in like a decade. And so it's just them two. Like Netflix is the big winner here. Like the Nathan's Hot Dogs kicks out one of the most famous athletes in like our time. And now Netflix is like reaping the benefits. It's gonna be incredible.
Yeah, I think I could actually be a really good competitive eater. I think that's a lost calling of mine that I would really
I agree.
Like anytime you look at me and you say, "Are you hungry?" I say, "Yeah, I'm always hungry." So I think I could put down. You've seen me put down some food in the past, but I think I could do it. But yeah, I think the divide for Kobayashi was he's a no bun guy. Like he wants to do it. He wants to do the eating without a bun. That was the dividing line because he was always the favorite for this contest before. And
he won it like every year, and then out of nowhere, out of the flames, a phoenix was born in Joey Chestnut, and then he just like took the mantle for a decade, and now they're barring him for having a vegan sponsor or whatever. So
I was hoping it was going to be some sort of doping, like Ozempic kind of challenge,
some bulimic thing or something like stapling a stomach or something weird.
Yeah, he artificially increased the size of his stomach on on purpose. Yeah,
the least controversial suspension ever, just a vegan sponsor. Anyway, Rams rankings, offense. This should be fun. Here we are in June. Draft though is over. Free agency is over. You know, little moves probably here and there will happen around training camp for a lot of teams. We've talked about some maybe the Rams could do, but as it stands right now, roster's pretty much set heading into training camp. So let's start with the offensive line, Skinny T. Obviously, we know the big addition in Jonah Jackson, the big re-signing in Kevin Dotson, the big move in moving Steve Avila from guard to center, and the big question is Alaric Jackson the left tackle of the future. I tied that all together nicely, I like to say. Pat myself on the back. Where do you rank this Rams unit among the 32 NFL offensive lines?
You are a true professional. I'm putting the offensive line fourth. Okay. I am a big believer in what they've done. They've made a big bet on this move, spending a whole bunch of money on two guards. Getting a good deal in Alaric Jackson. He's just making a couple $1 million this year, less than his counterpart Joe Noteboom, who is the most expensive backup in the league at that position. And then you got the stalwart there on the other side, Rob Havenstein, had coming off one of the best years of his career. So I think they made a good bet here, and they're behind for me the Lions, the Eagles, the Browns, and the other Los Angeles team, the Chargers. Ooh. They have 3 number 1 picks of the 5 positions. I didn't see them anywhere high on anybody else's rankings, but I think they're kind of being overlooked because they've been poorly coached over the last couple of years. But got Jim Harbaugh in there, and he's an O-line guy.
Yeah. Look at that. So Chargers fans rejoice. I mean, the talent's obviously there. We just saw them kind of drop off, but you mentioned it. They definitely have the talent to be definitely one of the better offensive lines. So, yeah, I think I definitely have this Rams. You know, I was going back and forth for sure. Obviously, I think top 10. I saw some out there when I was kind of looking around that have them even outside the top 10, which I was a little surprised by. Some of that I'm sure stems from the Alaric Jackson question mark, and then just obviously moving Avila from guard to center, even though he did play center in college. But I'd probably put them at like 7, so a little lower than you. Mainly just for those 2 reasons. You know, the Lions you look at, you know, they lose Jonah Jackson, but they get Kevin Zeitler. I mean, what a great, you know, off season for them, at least on the offensive line, and who they were able to retain in proven commodities, and Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow and yada yada yada. The Eagles are, I think, kind of the gold standard right now for offensive lines and what they're able to do. The Browns, as you mentioned, really, really good unit, got better there. I think also the Colts have been really good as of late. Obviously, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, and kind of the interior there. And then got to give, the Chiefs some love as well, I think. When you look at their big signings in Thuney a few years ago, Creed Humphrey. Yep. Rams fans still hate to hear that name. Creed Humphrey, obviously one of the best centers. And, it's a little different job when they're protecting a guy like Pat Mahomes, but I think it's a really good unit, and what they did after losing that Super Bowl and then rebuilding it to what they are. So I don't even know if I counted enough there, but I have the Rams right about 7. I think that's a fair spot going into the season. I think they have the talent to get higher than that if, Avila looks like a true NFL center, which I think he definitely can be. If Kevin Dotson can play at the same level as he did last year. Because, there's always that question of, here's a guy that was kind of a castaway, couldn't make it, and then all of a sudden, broke out last year. Was that a fluke, or was that a true sign of how good he can be at the position in this system with these players around him? I think it's the latter, but got to see it proven. It's kind of that Jordan Love theory, right? Show me a little bit more before we crown you one of the greats. Rams already crowned him with the contract, as they needed to do to keep him. And then, the Alaric Jackson question of how good he can be. He was definitely, I think, serviceable last year. You've brought up the stats many times, by far the worst on the line in terms of pressures and whatnot, but wasn't by any means an absolute atrocity at left tackle. I think he really surprised people in how well he was able to play in that. And I think if he's given the opportunity to truly be seen as that guy and have another year coaching with Wendell and whatnot. So yeah, I think 7's a good spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't put the Chiefs over him just because of their tackle situation. Juwan Taylor, definitely not a household name there. And then on the other side, they're drafting Kingsley Suamatia. I think I got that. And Wanya Morris, that's why I put the Chiefs ahead of them. But they have a much easier job, I guess, just because of who Pat Mahomes is in and outside of the pocket. So yeah, I think I like that you're in the top 10 here. We kind of looked at national rankings, and even when they were being critical of the offensive line, there wasn't a lot of reasoning behind it. It was these guys played well, but now it's a new year. and there's certainly questions there. Definitely that one about Dotson, where it's can we trust what we saw? And, that's definitely a question. Questions about Jonah Jackson coming off an injury as well, torn meniscus in the knee, several kind of smaller injuries. Can he hold up for 17 weeks? That's always a good question to ask. And that Alaric Jackson question, what's great about a guy like Alaric Jackson and Steve Avila is that they're cheap.
Yeah.
And that allows them to pay Jonah Jackson and Kevin Dotson really high salaries. So this is one of the most expensive offenses, period. And their offensive line is also right up there too. So, and it's those 3 guys. It's not Avila and Alaric Jackson. So that I think they're going to kind of live with that and see how far they can take it before the wheels fall off.
Yeah. They kind of have to make the other pieces work and the other, contracts be able to work. So the other interesting team, I think, and I had them, I believe, and that's how I got to 7. I think I only listed 5 teams. The Atlanta Falcons, I think, are another pretty strong unit. Raheem Morris there also, formerly of the Rams, Zach Robinson. And so, that'll be a familiar looking offense. And you got to think too, Kirk Cousins, who was a free agent who chose to go to the Falcons, he's not going to go to a team that has a bad offensive line. I mean, the guy's coming off an injury. He's had, if you watch the Netflix special Quarterback where he was on it, taking hits and shots, and at his age, it shows you it takes a toll. And so if you're picking your team, you're looking at money. You're looking at who gives me a chance for Super Bowl, but you're also looking at who's going to help me get hit the least. And when you look at the likes of the Falcons, with some of those great players they have in Drew Dahlman at center, Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, Jake Matthews at left tackle. I mean, it's a pretty solid unit as well. So,
Certainly.
I think,
let me ask you this one last question before we move on. Are we not accounting for the loss of, I'm forgetting the center from, how could I forget his name? Center from Philadelphia.
Jason Kelce.
Jason Kelce. Are we not knocking them enough for having to move on from him, his retirement?
It's a good question. I mean, Jason Peters also has been on their offensive line for a long time. I know last year he was, not as, I'm trying to remember if he played a little bit and then left or came back. He's like 57 years old. So
Yeah.
I can't totally remember. But no, it's a good question. I mean,
they're good everywhere else, but he was the number one center probably.
Yeah. It kind of is the same question of like, losing Aaron Donald on the defensive line in terms of just what they meant to that unit.
Yeah.
So, I think Cam Jurgens is going to be their new slot in center, and he'll have big shoes to fill. I think why they're still there is they just have every other position is like Pro Bowl caliber. So it's like you think the center is going to be a drop off, but they were still that much ahead of like everyone else, which is crazy.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Crazy. I mean, that team should be the drop off. They had the Eagles drop off last year, which obviously they had a huge coaching turnover now because of it. It's pretty wild when you look at that roster.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing they didn't go farther. Just we'll talk more about them, but AJ Brown, I mean, now they're adding Saquon Barkley. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
if Jalen Hurts is an MVP candidate, it's time to have that real conversation. Like, is he actually good or not? Like, everyone jumped on that really quick early, and last year obviously was a little bit of a regression, but
proof for all those Jordan Love lovers out there.
Yeah.
Jordan lovers.
Yeah. Like believers, lovers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an easier one though. Okay, moving on. So from line, should we go tight end?
Yeah. Okay. This will get the bad news out of the way.
Yeah, tight end is so interesting, right? Because when you really think about it, I mean, there's really not that many good tight ends. I mean, it's like 3. And so Tyler Higbee, when you look at just truly production wise, nothing really pops off the page, but in terms of just where he sits in line with his peers on production, it's really not that crazy low after you get past those like elite 3 guys. So, but anyway, that being said, kind of where do you have him fall? Because there is a lot of young talent coming in as a tight end. And so I think that's going to knock him down a little bit when you look at this draft class, last year's draft class. Plus, when you look at some tight ends that are getting some new coaching that you would think would infuse them and their numbers up. So how low, I guess, do you have Higbee?
Well, this is more out of a, I don't really know what's going to happen this year. This is, he's going to miss time. I don't think he's going to be back in week 1. So then you're kind of factoring in other guys early on, what is he going to look like? But the great thing about Tyler Higbee was always a consistent guy, good blocker, not a huge part of the offense, but a good enough part of the offense where they felt like they could, look to him, pick up first downs here and there. And he was always open in space, which you gotta look to McVay for what that was. So I put him at 16th just because I don't really know exactly what it's going to look like. You look at Colby Parkinson. They bring him in, and does that mean they're going to run a bit more 12 personnel? Is he going to be involved? Because he was not really necessarily much of a factor in the offense either. I think 336 yards was his high water mark in Seattle. And then Davis Allen as well. It's, played well in a little limited sample size. So I'm very confused as to what is happening with the tight end position this year. So I'm putting him just smack dab in the middle, just because he had been so consistent and such a good player in his role that he was fulfilling. He fulfilled it exactly what they needed. But the last couple of years, he's kind of regressed, and then you got this injury thing, which is not going to be easy to come back from, especially at his kind of age that he's at right now. He's not super old. I think he's getting close to 30 though.
Yeah, getting there. Yeah, what's funny is, when you look back statistically, like in terms of, I know fantasy is, a different conversation, but, a lot of people, the fantasy does obviously compile the stats. So it doesn't look at blocking and stuff like that, which I think Higbee is an underrated blocker, which is a good part of his game and makes him a tight end, why the Rams have invested in him. It's not just, the touchdowns and whatnot. But when you look at when he's healthy, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but like almost every year he's been healthy, he's been like a top 10 tight end in terms of fantasy point production, which I don't think a lot of people would think. What's hard with Higbee is he'll have 1 or 2 games where he like blows up and other games where he's like, 2 catches. Yeah. And that's more so just the offense in general, not necessarily him. So, but, in ranking, I probably honestly, and I like Higbee. I think he's good for this offense and what he brings when healthy, but just based on everything you said, based on coming back from the injury, based on this infusion of kind of younger talent, and based on, I think I said a few episodes ago, my belief in kind of Davis Allen and really his growth. So if whether we want to rank this as, maybe I can change my ranking as a room, but just as Higbee, I'm probably going like in that 25 range, way low. I know, but when you look at, Dalton Kincaid is a young pup who was a rookie last year, who's going to be just get better and better with Buffalo. Brock Bowers, obviously drafted this year, who joins a room with Michael Myers and with the Raiders. So they have both those 2 tight ends that are both extremely talented. You look at Kyle Pitts, who's probably going to get utilized a lot more now in Atlanta with Zach Robinson running the show instead of Arthur Smith and guys like that. So I just think Tyler Higbee by himself, with the injuries, with the change in the offensive philosophy potentially, and with the growth of Davis Allen, I drop him down farther 25 as a room. I put the room now probably top 15, because if you combine those 2 plus Colby Parkinson, am I saying that right? That sounds wrong for some reason. That's right. I was thinking like the disease Parkinson's, and I'm like, wait, is that right? The combination, I like the room a lot in what they're able to do, but just as a singular player, I think Higbee is just, he can prove me wrong, absolutely, but as it stands right now, I'd put him in like that 25-ish range. Is that way too low?
No, I mean, you make some valid points, and just to clarify, he is 31 and a half years old next month, so he is over the 30 hill. Who's next? What position's next?
30 Rock, over 30 hill.
Over 30 Rock, yeah.
Where would you rank, last question? I'm like drawing a blank all of a sudden. Who's the Chargers starting? Was it Hayden Hurst? Is their starting tight end this year coming in? Because I know they got rid of Gerald Everett.
Yeah, they brought in 2. They brought in Hayden Hurst and Dissly, Will Dissly, also.
Will Dissly, that's right.
Yeah.
The other Seattle tight end.
Yeah, I have no idea what to make of that room. Jim Harbaugh has always had kind of stud tight ends, so I'm kind of curious if he tries to turn Hayden Hurst into that. We'll see.
It's crazy that Hayden Hurst was like the first tight end taken in his draft class. Like there was a lot of hype surrounded by him. And
there's a ton of kind of chatter about, you've heard it, like going into draft season, like, should you be taking tight ends as high as some people are? And there's pretty interesting reasons as to why, just because they participate in so many aspects of the offense. They know the blocking schemes, they know what the running back is doing, they know what all the wide receivers are doing. So
yeah, I mean, there's people out there that argue that outside of quarterback, the next hardest transition from college to pros is a tight end, just because they have to know so many different jobs.
And you see it.
Said that, but I've heard that. Yeah,
you kind of see it with some of these first. It takes TJ Hawkinson. He was really highly drafted, and then just he's only finally kind of finding his footing, I guess.
Yeah, and like Noah Fant, same draft class as TJ Hawkinson, and he's shown some stuff here and there, but neither here nor there. All right. Let us know what you guys think. If am I being too harsh? Am I too brutal, or does that seem fair? Skinny's taking the safe route, going right in the middle, 16. Just, plug him in the middle.
It's a push, really.
All right, let's go running backs, shall we?
Let's do it.
So we're going room, not just single player.
Yep.
So, this looks Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, Boston Scott, Ronnie Rivers, Zach Evans. They won't have all of those guys on the roster after training camp, for sure. Like the most they'll have is 4. Hopefully you keep 1 on practice squad. There may even only be 3, depending on how the rest of the roster shakes out. So for the purposes of this exercise, Skinny, who are we taking as RB3? Are we going Boston Scott? Because they
Yes,
signed him, you think? You think that's the safe bet?
I
Zach
think
Evans
that's
going into year 2, and Ronnie Rivers is kind of that waiver guy they added that's, obviously been running back 2 because of injuries sometimes, but Boston Scott, you got to think they signed him to be RB3, right?
yeah, absolutely. You got to think that's the case for sure.
Okay. So for the sake of this argument, it's Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, rookie, and Boston Scott. So where are you putting this Rams running back room?
For all the talk about running backs, doing this ranking really illuminated that there are some pretty good running backs. And
Yeah.
I'm actually, I think I'm ranking the Rams running back room much lower than I thought I would have after looking at some of these rooms. I'm going 8th.
Okay. That's fair.
I got San Francisco number 1. Christian McCaffrey just pulls a lot.
Yeah.
So then I got Miami, Detroit, the Ravens, again, Derrick Henry. I got ATL next.
Yep.
With Bijan, Green Bay, and then the Browns. And a lot of these are just weighted just because that number 1 back is so good.
Yeah.
So that's where I fall.
Yeah,
high?
I think no, I think that's pretty fair. I have them, I think, at like 7. And I always say this. So this is, well, I guess people can say I'm being hypocritical or not, but like I always mainly quarterback wise, but like rookies, I always have to like downgrade just because they have yet to play a down. And so I'm like, I can't rank a guy who I've never even seen play in the NFL above a guy that's done it before. Like I just can't do it. Like, when we get to quarterback talk, like all 6 rookies are going to be the bottom 6 in my rankings to start the season. That's just the way I do it. That doesn't mean in my head, I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be better than some of the bottom tier veteran quarterbacks, but to start, I'm going to put them all bottom 6. He'll be number 1 of the rookies, but now running backs is different because I think running backs have a much easier transition. I mean, we've seen rookie running backs fly out of the gates every single season. And so I say all that because Blake Corum's going to be a rookie. I don't have any fear of him like having a rookie wall or whatever to get to. Like, I think he's going to complement, as we've talked about many times, Kyren Williams very, very well. So the idea of Kyren Williams and Blake Corum, I don't need to dive into why we like that. We've talked a ton about it. If you guys want to hear more, look at some of our past episodes or just hit us up and then we'll tell you why. But I want to bore the people that've heard us say it over and over and over again. Love them, compliment. I think Boston Scott was a nice addition, even if it's just for special teams reasons. He does add a nice change of pace and some veteran leadership to a very, very young room. So, I have them, I guess, 1 spot ahead of you. Very similar teams in there. Niners obviously won because of McCaffrey. You look at the Ravens. And did you have the Eagles in there?
I didn't put the Eagles ahead of them.
The Eagles are interesting because of Saquon going there now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have them ahead of the Rams, but you think of Saquon in that offensive line, like that's a recipe. But definitely the Falcons with Bijan, and definitely some of the others that you mentioned, I think are very, very strong. But I think right around 7 is a good spot for this Rams running back room.
It'll be interesting to see how the usage really affects this because I think the Rams are probably going to run the ball quite a bit. Just based on what they did last year with Kyren towards the end of the season, layering on Blake Corum there. Kyren's on the record. He's saying that he's going to be in the passing game a lot more too, which, you got to consider that when you're considering running backs, just because a guy that can do both really unlocks a whole bunch of stuff. And we just have not seen that since, peak Todd Gurley years, where he's catching 700, 500 yards. Kyren Williams was actually the leading pass catching running back for the Rams since that Gurley season. So it's been a while since, and he only caught 206 yards, I think was the number. And that's not a lot. I think that was 30th place. So, they could climb up these rankings really quickly if all of that starts clicking. The two kind of backs back there, if they can really, champion this running game and then add in that other factor of a pass catching back. This is what gets me excited about this season for this offense. The potential of this room, and they could rock it up. We got to see Kyren Williams stay healthy, and we got to see Blake Corum do it in the pros. But so
I was just gonna say, like if they put it all together and stay healthy, There's a lot to be excited about with this room and that offensive line, and what they're going to be able to do. So totally agree. I think 7, 8. I think 10 is like the floor for this unit, and that would be, anything lower than 10 would be injury ridden. So I think 10 is kind of the floor. I think they can get much higher, depending on performance and how involved, as you mentioned, they are in that passing game, which we saw spurts of Kyren Williams in it, but you mentioned it never like came full circle. Like there were a couple drops in there or times when they maybe didn't look his way. So if that changes, this becomes a really, really dynamic room. So real quickly, just because it broke right now, I just want to say it. I know this will be airing after the fact, but Lakers just took Bronny James. Shocking.
Oh, okay.
Shocking. And the NBA second. I mean, this shows how little I've been paying attention to basketball just because we're so laser focused on football. Like, when did the NBA split the first and second round over 2 days? And why is the second round happening at 2:30 on a Thursday?
You think about, how awesome the NFL is at just scheduling out the offseason after the Super Bowl. It's just, there's like, they just got it dialed in.
Science.
And then you look at the NHL and the NBA and you're like, what are you doing? Like
at least the NHL is doing their
Thursday?
draft over the weekend. Like,
Yeah.
the second round at 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday. Like,
But the Stanley Cup just finished. Anyway,
yeah,
I root for chaos in most sports, especially basketball. I was hoping Bronny was going to end up someplace, so that LeBron would get traded, or he would request getting cut or something, so that something crazy would happen. But
can you imagine? Because we were obviously talking about the NFL draft a lot, and Caleb Williams. I got my USC hate us because you ain't us shirt on. All this chatter, right, about Caleb Williams, which was never even true, but the rumors of him and his camp saying he'd only play for these certain teams, and everyone's like, oh, is he a bad apple? Is he a cancer? Months of these storylines, right? Just tearing apart this kid's because he wouldn't play in Chicago. We all know that's false, obviously, how it is. And then you have Bronny James here, the day of the draft, his agents calling, I don't know if you saw this story, calling teams that are not the Lakers or the Suns and saying, if you draft Bronny, he's going to play in Australia. But it's like, that's the NBA. That's just basketball. That's like normal. That's like par for the course.
yeah, I mean, so Maverick Carter, I think that's his agent, probably.
Rich Paul is his agent,
Rich
which
Paul.
I think is the same. It's that agency, Rock Sports or whatever. Yeah.
He said if we wanted the Lakers to take him in the first round, the Lakers will take him in the first round.
Yeah.
It's just funny how the different sports like, you can't say that to Jerry Jones.
No. Well, because the NFL, like it or love it, but I mean, there's obviously a lot of powerful people, but there's a lot of powerful people. The NBA is like, it's driven by like 10 people. Like,
yeah.
LeBron himself is
LeBron.
A player and has more power than probably 20 GMs.
Yeah, he's fired more coaches than the Yankees guy. What's his name?
Yeah, Steinbrenner. Yeah,
Steinbrenner. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Rob Pelinka's got to be the biggest like puppet in all of sports, the Lakers GM. But anyway,
catching strays.
We're not talking basketball here. So, okay, moving on now to receiving room, right?
All right,
receiving core. So this will be an interesting conversation because, and we'll just do it like this to make it simple. We're not going to do like ranking the 6 receivers. We'll do 3.
Okay.
So obviously Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and
Demarcus
Robinson. That's who I would put as wide receiver 3.
Yeah, I mean, that's my depth chart right now.
Yeah.
I just wrote about, is Tutu Atwell going to be able to find a place for himself to fit into the 53-man roster? So I'm not even I've cut off my belief in him now. He's dead to me.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
We poor little guy. Hey, we called the Ben Skowronek cutting. We didn't think it would happen as soon, but we called it, and a week later he was cut. And so I guess this is sayonara to Tutu Atwell now, thanks to you.
I've got most influential podcast out there, Rams podcast anyway. Can we now start calling ourselves everybody's favorite?
Sure. Self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
Or what was the one guy we were talking about? A self-proclaimed
disruptor. Yeah.
So in the podcast industry, we're self-proclaimed podcast disruptors.
I'm gonna put that in my email byline now. Self-proclaimed. Anyway, yeah. So. Yeah, I have high hopes for Jordan Whittington and Drake Stoops making the final 53. That's kind of my big bold prediction for the final 53.
Love it.
But the Rams group, I'm ranking at 5. Regrettably, I'm putting the San Francisco 49ers 1, Miami Dolphins 2, Philadelphia 3, and Minnesota 4 with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. I mean, it's tough. It's not the top 3, but those guys are great. So,
yeah. So you said 5. You have them at?
Yep, number 5. Yeah, that's 5.
Okay, I have them at. Sorry, I'm like re-establishing my math here. I think I put them at 7.
Okay.
So I have in similar teams. One in addition, obviously, I have the Dolphins at 1 with Tyreek and Waddle as the top 2. I'll put the Eagles at 2. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. And I don't know if you do Dallas Goedert as 3 or one of their other guys at 3. I'm putting the Bears at 3.
The Bears were an interesting one for me. I didn't keep them high because Keenan Allen just can't stay healthy over a long period of time. But
yeah, that's the big, and it's a rookie quarter. There's so many what ifs, but just it's June on paper. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, like plus Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett as tight ends. Again, we're talking receivers, but DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, like that's a dynamic 1 through 3. Like we're talking. Even the 3 or the 2 I listed above them are just top 2 guys, and the third guy is just like a guy, right? Like these are all 3, and Ruben Dunze is a rookie, but a top 10 pick. So I'll go Bears 3, Niners 4, Minnesota 5, and Rams 6. Did I say Rams 7 originally?
Yeah,
I meant 6. Okay.
Okay.
See how bad my math is? That's why I'm trying to like time these all up. So yeah, I think I got that all right. So Dolphins, Eagles, Bears, Niners, Vikings, Rams. Rams at 6 with Kupp, got to stay healthy. Puka Nacua, let's see it again, and Demarcus Robinson.
Yeah, no, it's hard for me to disagree with that. Romo Dunze was my guy. Romo Dunze was my guy as a wide receiver. He was my wide receiver 1. Not that I think he's the best, but he's like the Ryan Anderson skinny T pick of the century, lock of the week.
Nice.
Just because I like the way he plays. He's a physical dude. So yeah. I can't argue with that, with those rankings at all.
Yeah, and him and Caleb Williams seem to already have a pretty tight bond. So yeah, I mean it's a fun room. I mean, I know they're in the NFC. I'm not saying, but Caleb Williams plays there now. Like the Bears, you kind of root for him. Why not? Like there's no rivalry with the Rams. So
yeah, not yet. They're playing this year though.
They are.
Yeah,
I'd love to go in Chicago,
one
of the great American cities.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. What do you guys think? So you 5, me 6. So I think that's no matter what, they're top 10. I think when you have the two of Kupp and Nacua, it's just kind of like where you like them fitting within the top 10. Detroit's interesting. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown is fantastic. Just it's always a little less to be desired on wide receiver 2 and 3 after him. That's the big thing. So all right, we're done with receivers.
QB,
quarterback.
All
Matthew
right.
Stafford. We've talked about it with some guests a lot. We know our guy, Trevor Sikkema, puts him at 7, which I think is a pretty fair ranking among national reporters. But disruptor in the Rams community, Skinny T, where do you have Matthew Stafford?
I have him 4.
4, okay.
I tried to find reasons to knock him down just to like check myself. Like, is he like, but like when I was looking at it with a fine tooth comb, he just kept rising up. A lot of rankings are going to put Joe Burrow ahead of him.
Yep.
Some rankings are going to put Justin Herbert above him. For me, those 2 guys still have some stuff to prove that they can rise above Stafford at this point. At this point, Stafford has a Super Bowl ring. He's a 2024 MVP. Come on.
Yeah. Those guys are the kids here.
So, I put Mahomes number 1, Allen number 2, and Lamar Jackson. And, those three guys just have an element outside of the pocket that just adds something else to their game that Stafford's just never going to be able to match. But, what he does with his arm, what he does in the pocket, it's really second to none. And people just got to watch him. You just got to watch him. And last season we saw the switch. I've already talked about it. He went from kind of this gunslinger, this real like push it down the field guy, and he just became a much more nuanced passer. He just can't, you look at those passes to Puka Nacua, a lot of them are tough passes over the middle. And you got to put it in pinpoint accuracy. Otherwise you're going to put your receiver at risk, or you're going to end up turning the ball over. And he didn't do that last year. So really fantastic play. It's funny to find a new level of maturity for a guy at 36 years old, but I think he kind of like stepped into a new spot after that really tough 2022 season. I can brag all day if you want me to.
Love it. I know it's, it's funny. I remember going into last year when there was, I think it was because of Kelly Stafford again. Remember there's a story that like he couldn't connect with his teammates, and there was like, obviously that was bogus. Like, cool. Like they seem to do just fine last year. I think the big thing with Stafford too, and you mentioned the maturity, when you look at just his play on the field, like 2021 when they won the Super Bowl that year, there were specific games. I know it's a team sport. You win as a team, you lose as a team, but there were specific games that Stafford kind of threw them out of, like lost them the game. If you want to blame one player, I mean, you look at the Tennessee game, right? Like pick six, two interceptions, like inside the 20-yard line, and they lost that game like pretty close. The Green Bay game, like he had some faulty throws. Last year, I can't think of anything offhand where you can say, yeah, Stafford lost in that game. Like he changed his game from still being that gunslinger risk taker, but not being that gunslinger risk taker when it's going to cost you everything. And so it kind of like we talked about it in 21 and even 22 of like this hero ball mentality from coming over from Detroit that he had to play. And now 3 years in with McVay, he's kind of found himself and like, okay, I know I have this ability, but I also don't have to do it all. I have this great team around me too. And so I think that's a great thing to see. If you're on radio, we're taking a quick break. We'll be right back after this, and you can continue the show over on LAFBnetwork.com. But I actually have him ranked exactly the same as you. We did not plan this ahead of time, but I have the exact same ranking. I have Mahomes 1. I have Josh Allen 2. I have Lamar Jackson 3. Sometimes I want to knock Lamar Jackson down just because he cannot win in the playoffs, but just based on talent, on skill level, on what he can do in all aspects of the game, I got to still have him that high. And then I have Stafford 4, and I put Herbert 5 and Burrow 6. Burrow, he just can't stay healthy yet. Like he's so good, and his clutch factor might be one of the best in the game, period. Outside of maybe Mahomes, it's 1A, 1B, but in going into his 5th season, he's missed almost 2 of them. So it's like, it's hard to like put him that high when you miss that much time. So I got to have him at 6, but yeah, Stafford at 4 for me as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah.
Another
guy that just the rankings on him are just all over the place.
Yeah. I've seen as high as 3, and I've seen as low as somewhere in the teens. I can't remember,
like 19 or something.
And I can't think of a guy that swings that much. Only he's in his career, he's only had 4 MVP votes cast for him, and they were all last year.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's a good stat. Really?
Yeah.
His whole career, only 4, and they came last year.
Yeah. Wild.
Well, he's never even been to a Pro Bowl?
Oh, I can't imagine that's true. But I mean, I don't know.
It was something, before we move on.
Yeah.
Because I remember like seeing it was something like that, and I was like, wait, what? That doesn't seem right.
But that was such a great point of like him kind of settling into an offense where he doesn't feel like he has to take over, because in that 21 season, it was all him and Cooper Kupp. I mean, there's a reason Cooper Kupp won the Triple Crown that year. It was just because he was getting peppered constantly. I mean, obviously he's a great receiver, and he did what he did with the ball after he caught the ball. But yeah. Any Pro Bowls?
Yeah. Last year was his 2nd Pro Bowl ever. He had 1 Pro Bowl nod in 2014 with Detroit, and then 1 last year.
He's the Rodney Dangerfield of quarterbacks.
it's wild. Like the 21 season, and obviously he had the 17 interceptions, which is probably what knocked it. But in the 21 season, he had almost 5,000 yards passing and 41 touchdowns, and didn't go to the Pro Bowl.
I'm gonna look up Brett Favre's. How many interceptions did he throw?
Well, I mean, John Elway was up there too. I mean, when you look at those gunslingers, Elway's sometimes were in the 20s. But yeah, what was Brett Favre at? You look at Brett Favre. I'll look up John Elway here.
All right, Brett Favre, 1996 season. He won it back to back. In 1996, he only threw 13 that year. Okay, good for him. Okay,
Favre.
So that was a fail. Anyway, but another interesting statistic over the last 10 years, all quarterbacks have won MVPs, and all of them have won at least 11 games. Which
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which so maybe that plays. I mean, he won 10 last year, so I mean, but he only got 4 votes. But yeah, it's tough out there for quarterbacks right now.
Yeah,
and I mean, and Lamar Jackson. Yeah,
we talked about it a lot last year, so I don't want to belabor it. But Lamar Jackson, I'm not saying he was not earning of the MVP, but I just think what Stafford did with this team, like he had my. If I was one of the voters, which I'm not, I would have been the 5th on that ballot to add to the 4. So I just think what they're able to do with this team and his leadership. But anyway, maybe this is the year. BetOnline.ag. This is the year. Matthew Stafford for MVP. Got to make shirts.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put that up on the website. Everybody buy one of those.
Yeah. Stafford for MVP. Let's make it happen. All right. Lastly,
Stafford for president. Can we get that?
McVay for president, Stafford for MVP.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Yeah. That's it. Or we need to just get a free McVay, like with jail sign over him.
That's good. That's a good one.
That'd be a good shirt too. So
yeah.
All right. Yeah. No one steal our business ideas here. Just make sure to come buy them from us when we launch them at the LAFB locker room. Finally, offensive coaching. So we could do this as a coordinator, but we'll do it as McVay as an overall head coach because he calls the offensive plays. So this is obviously him ranked with other head coaches. A lot of great head coaches, a lot of new head coaches. Where do you put McVay in this all? There's always fun debate between two of them, but overall, I think everyone agrees he's probably, I would say, lowest I've seen is top 6. But where do you have McVay?
So I have to clarify something here because I did rate him among all head coaches. Are we ranking him among offensive head coaches or just all head coaches?
All head coaches.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Sorry, I made it confusing by saying the offensive part, but just that's why we're not doing LaFleur, but we're doing the DC next week. But anyway.
Okay, so I'm putting him in 3rd among all head coaches. If it was just offensive minded head coaches, I'm putting him 2nd behind Andy Reid only.
Okay.
So I have John Harbaugh ahead of him.
Okay.
There's only 4 active head coaches that have Super Bowl rings. Sean McVay is one of them. And Andy Reid and John Harbaugh are the other 2. And those 2 guys have just had such long-standing success over multiple teams and multiple quarterbacks. Which you look at a guy like Mike Tomlin. It's one thing to win when you have Ben Roethlisberger, but now we've seen he's still a great head coach. Getting to 8-8 season, 9-8 season with Kenny Pickett. Hats off to you, but yeah. That's number 3.
Love it. Yeah, I think that's fair. I have him at 2.
Okay.
I go Andy Reid at 1, the big tuna. I go Sean McVay 2. I go John Harbaugh 3, and then probably Kyle Shanahan, Mike Tomlin in that 4 or 5, whatever order you want to put. And yeah, I just think everything you said. I think McVay, not just for his offensive ingenuity, but leadership, his the winning. I mean, it's been only one losing season his entire head coaching career. Missed the playoffs twice, but the first time they were still a winning record on this playoffs. Only one losing season, and it was just a weird 2022. And then the bounce back that last year, which we've talked about as being kind of the piece de resistance of his coaching, of what they were able to do with that roster and that turnover. The ingenuity, and obviously Lesney's the GM, but he's very vocal and very part of the whole roster construction process and what they do in free agency and what they do in the draft. How many coaches can say they literally had their first round pick in their 7th season coaching and have had a Super Bowl win, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and a very, very strong winning record? Probably none. He's probably the only one. Literally, he had his first round pick 2 months ago.
That's crazy. I've never really thought of it like that.
Yeah. In 2016, Jeff Fisher was still the coach when they took Jared Goff. So, his first time ever drafting in the first round. So just the roster construction, dealing with, all the moving pieces of being in LA, different facilities, moving to SoFi, playing in the Coliseum, all that stuff. And then obviously just what they've been able to do winning wise and his playoff record and resume. I just think, the only reason why Andy Reid's ahead of him is because, he's obviously won 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. So, and Andy Reid's in his 35th year coaching. So
probably. Yeah. I mean, to kind of round out the rest of my list, I do have Kyle Shanahan up next, number 4. I'm going to put Jim Harbaugh number 5
already.
Okay. Yeah.
Jimbo.
Yeah. I have Matt LaFleur, Sirianni, and then Tomlin. Let me ask you this though. If Belichick and Seattle Pete were still coaching, Pete Carroll, would that bump them at all? I mean, with what we now know about Belichick, is Tom Brady.
I mean, all time, that's a different conversation, which I know you're not asking. But going into this season, no, I would still have. Yeah. I mean, but I love Pete Carroll, obviously. Bill Belichick, I respect. I don't even know if they were both coaching. I don't even know if I'd have either of them in the top 10 right now, just based on the last couple seasons, how it's in. I mean, Seattle still was definitely, you look at the 22 season. So when the Rams had their downfall season, that I think was one of Pete Carroll's best coaching season, right? Like trading Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, they ended up making the playoffs. Like everyone thought they were going to be terrible. So that showed Pete still got it. Last year was kind of a mixed bag. They were still a decent team. But I would probably put him fringe 10, and Belichick, if we're strictly based on heading into 24, Belichick might not even be top 15, which is crazy to say.
Yeah.
Which is why he's not coaching anymore. No one wanted him.
And Raheem Morris got hired ahead of him. So
yeah, there were 8 open jobs and no one wanted Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest coach ever. That's wild.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's, they say it's good to pack it in sometimes at the top and not wait till you fall down the ladder to say it's time to quit.
Yeah, he seems like he's doing just fine though.
Oh yeah, he's, I think, in
new young girlfriend. Did I see that?
Yeah, like a 24-year-old.
Yeah. Yikes.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're in this show. Okay, that's a good ending point there. So, Sean McVay, I have 2, you have 3. I think based on these offensive rankings, the Rams, if we were to weight it all out, add it all together, I'm just doing this in my head, computing, it's a top 7 offense, I think, basically, right?
Certainly.
That sounds about reasonable when you weight them all together. So they'll be in a good spot. We'll do defense next week. That'll be a much more interesting ranking probably because there's just so much newness. So that'll be kind of fun to see where they ache. And then, hey, we'll have to weight them together to see. I know we said we think we kind of have them power ranked in that top 14 range. We'll see after we do these weighted rankings if that changes a little bit or not. We shall see. But everyone, thank you for tuning in. This is the Rams Skinny on the LAFB Network. I'm Ryan Dyward. That's Skinny T. Everyone have a great weekend. We'll talk to you all next week.